Good morning. Welcome to Arlington Street Church, gathered in love and service for justice and peace. Welcome to the soul of Sunday. We are Unitarian Universalists. Ours is a historic faith with a progressive theology. We affirm the worth and dignity of every being, and we are all deeply interconnected. We are bound to one another, not by creed, but by covenant. And we are called to love with open minds, open hearts, and open hands. Whoever you are, those of all nations, all creeds, all colors, all kinds of love, you are welcome here. And now we turn to John for our chalice lighting.
This morning's chalice lighting, Won't You Celebrate With Me, is from the collected poems of Lucille Clifton. Won't you celebrate with me what I have shaped into a kind of life? I had no model. Born in Babylon, both non-white and woman, what did I see to be except myself? I made it up, here on this bridge, between starshine and clay, my one hand holding tight my other hand. Come, celebrate with me that every day something has tried to kill me and has failed.
We are so excited to have John Markham O'Connor as our guest preacher today. John has been a member of Arlington Street Church since 1990 and serves as chair of our worship committee. John just finished his first year in the Master of Divinity program at Harvard Divinity School, where starting in the fall, he will serve as an intern chaplain. John is an avid reader, and when time permits, he noodles around a bit on the piano. For the past 25 years, John has worked as a realtor in the greater Boston area. Welcome, John, and thank you for putting together this service for us. I'm so happy we can be here Zooming to worship together. We're doing an awesome job staying together while we are apart. Thank you again and again to our extraordinary tech team, Art Nava, Hala Hazar, Kem Moorhead, Rich Abreu, and Sandy Dixon. They're making all of this possible. If you haven't already downloaded today's order of service, there's a link in the chat, and it's also available on the homepage at ascboston.org. All of the hymn lyrics are included in the order of service and will be posted in the chat so we can sing together. And now, please say hello in the chat as we continue our virtual greetings. Let's engage that Arlington Street spirit of welcome that transcends social distance as we greet one another heart to heart.
Deep river, my home is over Jordan. Deep river, I wanna cross over into Camp cross over into campground. Oh, don't you want to go to that gospel feast, that promised land, where all is peace? Deep river, my home is over Jordan. Deep river, I wanna cross over into campground.
It is now time for our treasured ritual of sharing community candles of sorrow and joy. These candles were submitted to ascboston.org. If you didn't submit your candle and you have one you'd like to share this morning, I invite you to type it into the chat. In addition to sharing our sorrows and joys this morning, let's reach out to one another in the week ahead, staying connected. May these times remind us how very precious this beloved community is. Despite having to be physically apart, may we stay very close. And now, in the spirit of invocation, let's join in singing Sanctuary. The words are printed in your order of service and in the chat.
Open my heart to be a sanctuary, all made holy, loved and true. With thanksgiving, I'll be a living sanctuary for you.
Some of us come today with heavy hearts. We open our hearts to you. Our only candle, submitted candle of sorrow today is a mixed candle of sorrow and joy from the Arlington Street Church community as we celebrate Juneteenth this weekend. We celebrate the courage of enslaved people who fought for freedom. We celebrate the promise of freedom, but we are outraged at the enslavement still happening in our nation. We commit our love and our action to creating a nation where Black lives are truly able to be free.
Open my heart to be a sanctuary, all made holy, loved and true. With thanksgiving, I'll be a
Some of us come today in joy. We share your joy. A candle of joy from Richard Abreu, a candle of joy and tremendous gratitude for Amy Stevens, the transgender woman whose lawsuit resulted in the extension of federal non-discrimination laws to the LGBT community. She died last month before the decision was announced, but my God, what a legacy. If the arc of history bends toward justice, it's because people like Amy make it bend. Amy Stevens, presente. A candle of joy from John O'Connor. Welcome to my mother, Anne, who joins us this morning from Fitchburg via Zoom. Welcome, Anne. A candle of joy from Carol Fisher. I would like to enter a huge candle of thanks and joy to the tech team for all the work they did on my computer to bring it up to speed. A candle of joy from the Arlington Street Church community at the recent Supreme Court rulings this week. Joy at the protection of the DACA program, which gives protection to immigrants brought to the United States as children. And joy at the court's decision to ban discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity. We celebrate decisions that uphold love, and we pray that love is the focus and the guiding light as we as a nation face many decisions to come. A final candle of joy from Arlington Street Church on this Father's Day. Thank you to all who identify as fathers and all who serve as a father to another. We are grateful for all you do to love and to nurture. We celebrate alongside all for whom this day is joyful. We are thinking of all for whom this day is difficult, for those who have been hurt by a father, for those who are grieving a father. We send you our love and we hold you in our hearts.
Open my heart to be a sanctuary, all made holy, loved and true. With thanksgiving, I'll be your living sanctuary for you. Open my heart to be a sanctuary, all made holy, loved and true. With thanksgiving, I'll be your living sanctuary for you.
For all the sorrows and all the joys we hold in our hearts, we light a silent candle to remember and to rejoice. May the peace of our sanctuary enter into our hearts as we share a quiet moment together, breathing our prayers for ourselves, for one another, for our country, and for the world. Amen. Let's join now in saying together the affirmation and covenant of this beloved spiritual community. The words are printed in your order of service and are in the chat. Love is the spirit of this congregation, and service is our gift. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to speak our truths in love, and to help one another. El amor es el espíritu de nuestra congregación y servicio es nuestro regalo. Esto es a lo que nos comprometemos, convivir en paz, hablar nuestras verdades con amor y ayudarnos los unos a los otros.
What have I gotta do to make you love me? What have I gotta do to make you care? What do I do when lightning strikes me? And I wake to find that you're not there. What do I do would make you want me? What have I gotta do to be heard? What do I say when it's all over? Sorry seems to be the hardest word. It's sad, so sad. Oh, it's a sad, sad situation, and it's getting more and more absurd. It's sad, so sad. Why can't we talk it over? Always seems to me that sorry seems to be the hardest word. It's sad, so sad. Oh, it's a sad, sad situation, and it's getting more and more absurd. It's sad, so sad. Why can't we talk it over? Always seems to me that sorry seems to be the hardest word. What do I do to make you love me? What have I got to do to be heard? What do I say when lightning strikes me? What do I gotta do? What have I gotta do? Sorry seems to be the hardest word.
When the past appears as today, when today reflects back a vision of ourselves, leaving us taken aback, this, again, still, when the phantom sights, sounds, and screams of injustice join today in the plea, I can't breathe, when Black America cries out, how could you do this to me? The answer cannot be, I didn't do anything. I don't know you. As a progressive community of faith, one that is predominantly white, how is it best to respond to systemic racism? What is the best course of action? These are difficult questions. Recently, a placard at a Black Lives Matter protest caught my attention. It said, "Black Lives Matter. Treat racism like COVID-19. 1, assume you have it. 2, listen to the experts about it. 3, don't spread it. And 4, be willing to change your life to end it." As imperfect as it may be, let's take up this analogy. 1, assume you have it. This should make anyone feel uncomfortable. The immediate defensive reaction is, no, not me. No one wants to wake up, look in the mirror, and see the word racist scrawled across their face. And yet, viewed through a different lens, one that is not the lens of one's own personal intention, might one appear to be racist? The uncomfortable answer is yes. Depending on the lens through which life is viewed, things look very different. In a discourse titled "On a Certain Blindness in Human Beings," philosopher and psychologist William James wrote in 1900, and I paraphrase here, "All human beings are afflicted with a blindness in regard to the feelings of people different from themselves. We are practical beings, each of us with limited functions and duties to perform. Each is bound to feel intensely the importance of their own duties and the significance of their own situations. This feeling is in each of us a vital secret, and yet, vainly, we look to others for sympathy. Meanwhile, the others are too absorbed in their own vital secrets to take any interest in ours. Hence the stupidity and injustice of our opinions, so far as they deal with the significance of others' lives." James is saying, in other words, that we are all so wrapped up in our own lives that we can have no real understanding of the lived experience of others. Nothing illustrates a concept better than a story. Telling on himself, James relates that some years prior, he had been journeying in the mountains of North Carolina when he and his driver passed through a small valley where a settler had cut down all the trees, burned all the brush, built a cabin, fenced in some pigs and chickens, and planted some corn between the burned stumps. James states, the forest had been destroyed, and what had improved it out of existence was hideous. Ugly indeed seemed the life of the squatter. Then I said to the mountaineer who was driving me, "What sort of people are they who have to make these clearings?" "All of us," he replied. "Why, we ain't happy here unless we are getting one of those coves under cultivation." James continues, "I instantly felt that I had been losing the whole inward significance of the situation, because to me the clearing spoke of nothing but deforestation. But when looked on the hideous stumps, what they thought of was personal victory, honest sweat, persistent toil, and final reward. Depending on the lens, things look very different." As millions watched Officer Derek Chauvin kneeling on the neck of George Floyd, who was crying, I can't breathe. Black Americans and many others saw yet another lynching of an innocent black man at the hands of a racist white cop. It was deeply traumatizing. It was all too easy to see in George Floyd a father, a brother, a son. And yet, initially, what many white Americans in positions of authority saw was an excessive use of force with unintended consequences, or perhaps a bad cop, likening Chauvin to a bad apple in the barrel. So different were the lenses through which this event was viewed that it took 4 days of massive protests before Chauvin was even charged with a crime. How can we come to understand the forces at work in American society that can simultaneously produce two such radically different views? And how does one examine white supremacy and understand how it is being perpetuated? 2, listen to the experts. Become a student. In order to understand the role systemic racism plays in American society, everyone must educate themselves and come to an understanding of our collective past. For just as Black Americans collectively bear the burdens of the legacy of slavery, such as unequal opportunity in employment, education, housing, health care, and economic security, so too, conversely, do white Americans continue to reap the advantage of centuries of white privilege. To understand systemic racism, we must set aside the lens of our own personal intentions and look through a far more critical lens at our past. So what does the past have to tell us about Massachusetts, about Boston, about Unitarian Universalists, and even about Arlington Street Church? It's complicated. In 1775, just before the Revolution, its founding minister of our congregation, the Reverend John Moorhead, was a slaveholder himself. His slave, Scipio Moorhead, was not only a talented painter, but a poet as well. His story is poignant and worth telling. Scipio's drawing of Phyllis Wheatley, the first African-American woman to have a book of poetry published, appears in the frontispiece of her book. Phyllis was the slave of the Wheatleys, who were family friends of the Moorheads. In her book, Phyllis included a poem entitled "To S.M., a young African painter on seeing his works." In the poem, Wheatley praised Scipio and hoped that their collaboration would lead to his immortal flame. "Still may the painter's and the poet's fire to aid thy pencil and thy verse conspire." It was not to be. When our very own Reverend John Moorhead died, Scipio was auctioned in January 1775 as part of the estate sale. The slave auction took place right across the Boston Common on the corner underneath the Liberty Tree, of all places. Although soon after the Revolution, Massachusetts slaves successfully sued for their freedom under the new state constitution and slavery was abolished, the fate of Scipio is unknown. His buyer's name was not recorded at the auction, and there's no record of Scipio after 1775. In the 1800s, enterprising Bostonians and Bay Staters accumulated vast sums of money in the triangle trade between Massachusetts, West Africa, and our southern states, which involved slaves, sugar, cotton, and rum. Fortunes were built upon the slave trade and in the manufacturing in Massachusetts mills of raw materials produced by slave labor into finished products. These fortunes helped fund some of our state's most famous churches, where still, today, we worship. Hospitals, where still, today, we seek care in the age of COVID-19. And universities, where still, today, we go to learn. Despite his personal abhorrence of slavery, gleaned from the time he spent in the South as a tutor to children of wealthy plantation owners, our very own William Ellery Channing, whose statue stands at the corner of the public garden right in front of the church, never took a public stand from the pulpit for the abolition of slavery. Channing's hesitancy reflected our congregation's sentiments. Unitarians in general were not the first to embrace the cause of abolition. Economic self-interest and the desire to preserve the Union competed with notions of justice and fairness, yielding different results. Unitarians, like the country, were divided. It was a Unitarian senator from Massachusetts, Daniel Webster, who crafted the Fugitive Slave Law, which required all escaped slaves who were recaptured, even in the free states, to be returned to their masters. President Fillmore, another Unitarian, signed the act into law. And yet, other Unitarians worked for the cause of abolition. Anti-slavery societies were established in many communities in the Northeast. Their activities included supporting publications that advocated for abolition, raising money, participating in the Underground Railroad, and organizing speaking tours. In 1852, the Rochester Ladies Anti-Slavery Society, the members of which were attendees at the First Unitarian Church of Rochester, organized and funded one of the most famous abolitionist orations of all times. And I quote, "At a time like this, scorching irony, not convincing argument is needed. Oh, had I the ability and could reach the nation's ear, I would today pour out a fiery stream of biting ridicule, blasting reproach, withering sarcasm, and stern rebuke. The hypocrisy of the nation must be exposed, and its crimes against God and man must be proclaimed and denounced." Frederick Douglass, The Meaning of the 4th of July for the Negro, July 5th, 1852. In Boston, in our very own congregation, in May of 1854, matters finally reached the boiling point. Slave hunters had captured a fugitive, Anthony Burns. Unitarian George Ticknor Curtis, who was Boston's slave commissioner charged with returning fugitive slaves, took the action to return Burns to slavery. Curtis was a member of our congregation, whose then minister was Ezra Stiles Gannett, William Ellery Channing's successor. In response to this outrage, Theodore Parker, another Boston minister, organized a protest, and over 5,000 people gathered together at Faneuil Hall. In an attempt that day to free Burns, shots were fired, and a federal marshal was killed. This was all too much for the normally reserved Gannett and pushed him into public opposition against the institution of slavery. Even some of Boston's most conservative mill owners, who depended on slavery for the production of cotton for their factories, denounced the Fugitive Slave Law. The tide for Unitarians had finally turned towards abolition. Ours is a checkered past. Our subsequent record is not without blemish. Yes, members of Arlington Street Church and Unitarian Universalist actively participated in the civil rights movement and marched in Selma. Membership in some of our Unitarian Universalist urban churches were integrated and multiracial. And yet, much progress was lost in the late 60s as a result of the assassination of Dr. King and subsequent funding disputes between black and white Unitarian Universalists, which would later become known as the Black Empowerment Controversy. And finally, in the 1970s, during the childhood of my memory, white Bostonians protested in the streets again, not for civil rights, but against the forced integration of schools through busing. White Bostonians eventually voted with their feet. They either put their children in private school, if they could afford it, or moved to the suburbs to take advantage of the public school systems in all white towns. Actions that may appear through the unexamined lens of personal intention, as parents only wanting the best educational opportunity for their children, when viewed through a more critical lens of self-examination, look like examples of systemic racism. Fact, today, the Boston school system is only 14% white. How could you do this to me? Having examined our collective past through a lens of critical self-examination, how do we bring an end to systemic racism? Our placard offers us a little guidance. 3, don't spread it. And 4, be willing to change your life to end it. More specifically, in a piece published by the Catalyst Project entitled "The Future of Solidarity: How White People Can Support the Movement for Black Lives," the authors argue, among other things, that white people need to work toward a bold and powerful vision for comprehensive liberation, not just an end to police murder. We must all work for equal opportunity in education, housing, employment, and health care. White people need to support black organizations and educate themselves on how to be allies. White people need to get other white people on board who aren't already working for social justice. As a society, if we're not moving against white supremacy, we are moving with it. Everyone needs to get out the vote. And finally, we all need to make friends with discomfort. This is difficult, uncomfortable work. When the past appears as today, when today reflects back a vision of ourselves, leaving us taken aback, this, again, still, when the phantom sights, sounds, and screams of injustice join today in the plea, "I can't breathe," when Black America cries out, "How could you do this to me?" we must answer with action. As a nation, we have been here many times before. America is long overdue to take a hard, uncomfortable, and painful look at systemic racism, not through the lens of our own personal intentions, but through the critical lens of self-examination. We must acknowledge the unlevel playing field that is America, and we must set it right. We must dismantle systemic racism everywhere that it hides in plain sight. In school funding schemes that result in unequal education, in zoning regulations that prohibit multi-unit dwellings in the suburbs, in food distribution networks that result in food deserts and poor health, in gerrymandered voting districts that result in the underrepresentation of Black people in elected office, in election commissions and districts, such as Atlanta, where Black people stand in line for 8 hours just to cast a vote, in a healthcare system that results in Black people dying at disproportionate rates of COVID-19. My friends, as people of faith, we are called to ensure that our values of love, service, justice, and peace move from speech into action. It is not enough to end police violence and murder. It is not about getting rid of a few bad apples. It is time for a new American social contract that serves all of its citizens equally. America will be judged by its actions, not its intentions. It's time to change our lives. It's time to take a stand. Bless your hearts. Amen.
Thank you, John. Each of us has the power to make a difference, to do our part to strengthen the safety net that holds us all. Your generous enthusiasm and support for everything Arlington Street is doing to uplift and uphold us, keeping us strong and connected, is deeply appreciated. All of us, opening our virtual wallets and giving our hearts, continues to make it possible for us to thrive in these difficult days. Each week, we fill the virtual collection plate, and the generosity of this beloved spiritual community never ceases to amaze us. We know these times are hard, and they are affecting each of us differently. As we continue to live through this pandemic, we are reminded that community is a place to hold each other when we can, and to be held by each other when we need support. If this is a time when you can give, please take a moment now to text the word GIVE, G-I-V-E, to 617-300-0509. Scan the QR code in the order of service, or click on the yellow Donate button on the bottom right of the homepage at ascboston.org. Here's that number again, 617-300-0509. Thank you for your generosity. After you make your gift to sustain our beloved community, please continue to share in the chat what inspires you during these difficult times. Thank you. At the close of today's service, during virtual coffee hour, an invitation will appear on your screen inviting you to join a breakout room. This is an opportunity to visit with each other in a smaller, quieter setting. If you click yes, you'll automatically find yourself there. You can just say hello, or you might want to share a thorn and a rose from this past week, what's hard and what's good. Please be sure to leave time for everyone to speak. I'll do my best to get around to each breakout room. After a few minutes, you'll be invited back from your breakout room to say goodbye to everyone. There are so many great moments of connection happening this week in the Arlington Street Zoom room. Thank you to all who are serving as hosts this summer to keep these programs going. A full list of events and link to the Zoom room can be found at ascboston.org. Whether you have been a part of our community for decades or today is your first service with us, all are welcome at any of our events. Reverend Kim and Reverend Beth invite you to join them for iced tea in the Arlington Street Zoom room this coming Wednesday at 5 o'clock. Bring your own tea. I'll look forward to seeing you here next Sunday morning. Remember, my friends, love is the spirit of this congregation, and we are all in this together.
I wish I knew how it would feel to be free. I wish I could break all the chains holding me. I wish I could say all the things that I should say. Say 'em loud, say 'em clear, for the whole round world to hear. I wish I could share all the love that's in my heart. Remove all the parts that keep us apart. I wish you could know what it means to be me. Then you'd see and agree that everyone should be free. I wish I could give all I'm longing to give. I wish I could live like I'm longing to live. I wish I could do all the things that I can do. Though I'm way overdue, I'd be starting anew. I wish I could be like a bird in the sky. How sweet it would be if I found that I could fly. I'd soar to the sun and look down at the scene. Then I'd sing 'cause I know. Then I'd sing 'cause I know. Then I'd sing 'cause I know how it feels to be free.
Friends, let us join our hands together over our heart center for our benediction. What can we do with our days but work and hope? Let our dreams bind our work to our play. What can we do with each moment of our lives but love till we've loved it all away? Love till we've loved it all away. The service begins when the service ends. Bless your hearts.
Where you go, I will go, beloved. Where you go, I will go. Where you go, I will go, beloved. Where you go, I will go. For your people are my people. Your people are mine. Your people are my people. You're divine, my divine. Where you go, I will go, beloved. Where you go, I will go. Where you go, I will go, beloved. Where you go, I will go. For your people are my people. Your people are mine. Your people are my people. You're divine, my divine.
visit ascboston.org for more information about this historic Unitarian Universalist congregation. Arlington Street Church, gathered in love and service for justice and peace.